Ladies and gentlemen, very welcome to the next session of the CX Goalkeeper podcast. Today I'm very excited because I have James with me. Hi, James.
Hey, Gregorio, how are you?
Good, thank you. I am really happy to have you here. We discussed in the pre-recording how we met, and I want really to say you helped me quite a lot with the preparation of the accredited customer experience specialist certification. It was a great support. Thank you very much. And today I'm really keen and happy to have a discussion, a smart discussion with you. But let's start, please, explaining who you are, what you are doing, James.
Of course. So I'm James Perryman. I actually run two businesses, but I think the important one is my business called Monentus, which is where I focus on helping businesses and sometimes kind of leaders within businesses with customer experience. And it's the reason my business is called Monentus is because it's all about that moment. And when you think of customer experience, we've got to provide great customer experiences all the time. It has to be throughout our organization, but what makes us get those top CSAT scores, those top NPS scores, what makes that 10 out of 10 experience? It's those moments, it's those things that customers don't expect that wows them. And just even when things might be going wrong, when we're in a global pandemic like we are, and times are difficult and it's hard for businesses to provide answers to customers and solutions and services to customers, stepping back and thinking about what can I do that just makes my customers stay in love with me, fall in love with me. That's the key. And so we do that through coaching and mentoring, through some training, and through consultancy, just doing short, sharp consultancy projects with businesses.
Thank you, James, for the introduction. And perhaps at this moment, I can really use what I learned in my Latin sessions. Carpe diem. This is the momentum. It means now we need to understand, and I think this is really the key to understand how to cope with the customer and how to create these experiences. As you said, you are touching quite a lot of different topics. Today, I would like to deep dive with you in the topic customer experience assessment. And for example, perhaps let's start really with the easiest one, with the basics. What is a customer experience assessment?
It's a great question. I think there's actually two ways of looking at it. You've got a customer experience assessment, which I've alluded to just then in my introduction. So whether that's CSAT, so customer satisfaction, net promoter score, NPS, all those kind of measurement assessments, which if you put them in place in the right parts of a customer journey, then you get that view of the experience at those moments in time, and ultimately if people are recommending you or not, and if you're satisfying your customers or dissatisfying them. I think the other side of it then is actually assessing your maturity as a business. Whether you're a small business, medium, large, doesn't matter. If you know how mature you are when it comes to customer experience internally and externally, then that's a really valuable form of assessment. And you can use that to complement what you have from a CSAT and NPS data perspective as well. It gives you that rich picture of what's going on inside your organization, with your people, with your leaders, with how you get stuff done, how you launch new products and services, how you change things, with the end result for customers.
This is really interesting, and bring me to the idea, or to thinking about the 6 core competencies of the CXPA, the Customer Experience Professional Associations, where you have different areas where you need to be an expert in order to get the certification. And if I understand well, what you're saying is you could apply these areas also to a business to understand where you are in your maturity level. Which are the most important topics that you touch base while you are performing such a customer experience maturity assessment?
So I think, I think it must be a thing about models in business, but I kind of see there's 6 key areas, and they are at a headline level, they're around the vision. So your customer experience vision, they're around leadership, and that's about your leaders role modeling the right behaviors and really thinking about customers. You then got the customer themselves. You've got a bit around your culture, a bit around your design methodology, so how you go about designing your experiences, and then the governance. So how do you stay on top of them? How do you keep on track with them. So I mean, kind of let me go into a bit more detail with that. So every business should have a strategy, have a set of goals of what it wants to achieve. And they're not always, and very rarely, mentioning customers. They're often around revenue, profit, EBITDA. They might be about employees, around being the best place to work, and looking at kind of almost an eNPS, so kind of how your employees are feeling. But a vision should also include the customer, and you should have, certainly within the area of your business that owns the customer. So whether that is in marketing, whether that's customer service, whether that's a customer experience function, kind of at a board level, there should be a vision that talks around kind of what are our objectives for customer experience. How well is that vision understood at all levels of the business, whether that's people in head office functions, whether that's people out in the stores delivering products or services to your customers. Do your people believe in the vision? Were they involved, and so on? It's, you know, that vision needs to be understood. As a saying that I've seen very recently with quite a big business that I'm working with, AO, who said, and it was the MD, was the CEO, who said, if I'm getting bored of repeating the message, then it's understood. And that's at the point at which I really know. So, you know, if you're just getting to the point where you've talked enough about your vision, then people understand it. Then it's there, it's done, and, you know, and they should be embracing it. In order to bring the vision to life, and in order to, I think, to give it life, then your leaders need to be on board with that. The leaders need to engage their people, their teams, but they also need to talk about the customers at their board meetings, at their leadership team meetings. They need to think about the customer when they're making important decisions, commercial decisions around the business, and they need to spend time with the customers, whether that's bringing customers into the business and having customer forums, whether that's going out into shops, into retail, if that's possible, and just watching customers, interacting with them, going into the customer service areas, call centers. You know, that can be done remotely. You know, we've just tripped into 2021 where the COVID is still around, and, you know, certainly in UK and Germany, I know we're back into a full lockdown. So whilst that impacts our ability to go out and about and interact with customers, it doesn't mean, or it doesn't stop us doing it remotely. We can very easily do that. And so leaders need to be really thinking about the customer, talking about the customer, and making sure that, you know, they bring it to life very regularly. I think the bit around the customer is about knowing who they are. And whether you're a business and you're a big business that you can segment your customers like some do, and it's kind of part of, I know, what we talk around in the ACXS program, but knowing who they are, knowing who your typical customer is, and making sure they've got a voice in your business. You know, a voice of the customer program is so rich in order to bring some of that insight in and to bring some of that challenge in. And I talked around leaders bringing the customers into the organization. You should do that. I work with a company who deliver some training to businesses, and they will physically bring in a cardboard cutout of a customer into the meetings, so that when you're having a really difficult discussion, you've got a really difficult decision to make, then yes, you might have the marketing director there, the sales director, the HR director, IT, and so on, but you've got someone who is representing the customer right then, and you can look at them and say, what would they be saying right now? You know, if they had a voice, what would they think to the decision that we're about to make? What would the pros and cons be? And you bring it to life. And but also with a customer voice, you can get insight through customer forums, through NPS surveys, CSAT surveys, and so on. So, you know, you keep it alive. You bring that outside in. In terms of the culture, obviously by leading from the top, by bringing the customer in, you really have a good customer experience culture. And I think you've got to make sure that the people in your organization know and understand and really recognize that they've got a voice. So it might be people who are customer facing and they get those insights, they hear them firsthand and they want to share them. It might be people who talk to friends and family about the business, or they hear from friends and family about the business, and they want to bring that insight in, and they need to know that they can do that. They need to know that when they're coming in and saying, I think there's something better and different we can do towards our customer experience and to improve it, that it will be listened to, it will be reviewed, it will ultimately be acted upon. And to make sure that the people you're recruiting into your business think about customers. You can do that through your selection process, through the interviewing, through your job descriptions, through job adverts. There's so many ways in which you can test that people think customer and bring that in. And then when you've got all that, you've got to life, you've got leaders that are leading by example, you've got customer insight coming in, you've got the customer in your business, customer in your room, you've got the culture where your employees really talk about customers and talk about what they learn and what they know, then you've got to have that right design process in place. So when you're thinking about changing products and services, changing your organization, maybe changing target markets that you go to, maybe you want to reach out to a different customer segment. As you go through, certainly as a big organization, thinking about what to do, what to change, what to create, then you've got to have some maturity in your design process. You've got to have checkpoints as you go through to say, is this still what our customers would want? Are these customers we're trying to target still the right ones? What might have changed in the outside world that would change our thinking? What have our competitors done that might change what we're thinking? What have we done as a business that might impact it? Have we brought the insight in? Have we brought the customer's voice in? Have we done everything we can to make sure that this is really driven from a customer perspective than just a revenue point of view? And then keeping that alive really is that governance piece. It's saying, what are our KPIs that we have around customers? Where do we measure them? How do we track them? How do we talk about them? How do we make sure that we've got the right conversation at the right level? So at a business board level, we want to be talking about customers and customers' KPIs. Where else in the business do we need to have that focus? It'd be great that we have it within kind of design forums and kind of design parts of the organization, but actually, where else do we bring it in? How do we make sure that we make investment decisions with the customer in mind? How do we make sure that when we're kind of facing into environmental issues, market issues, things that impact us as a business, where do we bring that customer thinking in? So that for me is a very whistle-stop tour around those 6 areas of vision, leadership, customer, culture, design, and governance. And you can easily assess kind of where you're at in that model of maturity, I think.
I think it's great. We had in the last 5 minutes, we had a short customer experience masterclass. You touched all the relevant topics that need to be touched, and I think this is a great explanation. Perhaps with your words, or to make that a bit better understandable for the people following this discussion, why is so important to perform at some point in time a maturity assessment?
I think it's important because certainly if you're looking to grow as a business, you've got to have a benchmark, and if you really believe and you say that you want to win more customers, you want to retain more customers, you want them to spend more with you, you want them to recommend you more to their friends and family, then you've got to have a benchmark. You've got to know where you're at. And so part of that is around those measures, that CSAT, that NPS, that kind of thing. But part of it is how you are as an organization. How do you know where you're at to be able to improve? If you don't have measures in place, KPIs, if you don't have leaders that bring people in, then you don't know where you're starting from, and you also don't know where to make improvements. You might say, in our board meetings every week we review revenue, operating costs, employee numbers, and customer satisfaction. That's great. You review it and you'll follow the trends and you'll see that customer satisfaction is going up and down. But if it starts going up, do you know why it's going up? Where is the governance? Where are the design checks that say it's because we made that change? Or if it goes down, where do you know that it's going down? You'll be blind effectively. So by understanding your maturity as an organization, you've got that starting point, and it gives you a lens, a very easy lens of where to make improvements, so that you've got that framework in place, you've got that way of working in place, so that you can start fine-tuning all those different bits of your customer experience, those different bits of your customer journey, knowing that as an organization you're stable, you've got a great position, and you can assess it again in 6 months' time, a year's time, to say, right, have we become even more mature? And that maturity, how does that match to our business growth, to our revenue, to our brand recognition, to our market share, all that kind of good stuff? You've got a really good correlation.
I think this is really important, and what you're saying is where you start at some point and then you want to get somewhere with these KPIs, and you need to define the paths how to achieve that. And with this assessment you can check where you are in your journey, in your growth strategy, not speaking only about revenues and so on, but for surely also about customer experience, because at the end customer experience, if it's done in a proper way, it's also growth strategy, and therefore you can find a way to get there. You mentioned something, perhaps to do it now and then in 6 months. When do you perform such a maturity assessment, perhaps also based on your last experience with your customers?
Well, we almost certainly do it at the beginning. You know, when our clients engage us to help them address either, you know, a low customer experience scores or low customer sat scores, or, you know, it's their first step into being really customer centric, one of the first things we'll do is take that assessment view straight away. And you know, what we'll do is we'll coach them around it. If we've got an organization who we think, and maybe we recognize from our research, might be quite immature, we'll do some coaching with them first before we run that assessment and before we share the assessment. Like you would with any type of survey or type of process or assessment that gives you a score, you've got to know they're ready for it. So if they think they're okay and actually their assessment comes in and they're not okay, you know, you've got to hold their hand with taking them through that, but also highlight why those areas are low, and equally why those areas are high. So we'll do it at the beginning, because then it also helps us demonstrate the difference we've made. You know, because part of what we've got to do is show that we've helped a business increase its performance in this context as customer experience. So if we can't show a growth in maturity and, you know, marry that with a growth and an improvement in customer experience scores, then, you know, I don't think we're demonstrating the difference we make. So I think it's important to do that, and to do that early on. I think the second point in which we make an assessment really is dependent on the work we're doing, the level of maturity of the organization, and the type of organization. You know, if you've got a startup and, you know, who move quickly, they act quickly, they react quickly, then you might want to do that assessment quite regularly to show the change so that they've got that real-time view almost. Whereas if you've got a big company, you know, which is almost like a bit of a machine, you know, just quite heavy to move, then you know, I think at least every 6 months as a minimum is right, because it takes a long time for organizations to go through change, to think about putting new governance in, to think about new ways of working. So, you know, if you do it any sooner, you might see a small degree of change, but it won't be enough to motivate people. You know, if it's too soon and they think, well, we've only gone from a 6 to a 7 in our governance score, but I feel like we've done a lot more work, that's not very motivating. It doesn't inspire people to carry on. Whereas if you maybe did it a year apart and you could demonstrate a much bigger degree of change, then, you know, that's a nicer picture to see for organizations.
Sure, and I think it's extremely relevant also to understand that a self-assessment is quite different from a third-party assessment performed in a professional way, and there are quite a lot of statistics that are saying that most of the time in the self-assessment you are thinking that you're better than what you really are, and also compared to the competitors, and therefore I think it's really important. And I would say today I learned also that we should run more often our maturity assessment, because you're speaking about an average of 6 months. And I think quite a lot of company also on my side thinking about Switzerland. If they are doing that, it's on a yearly basis, and perhaps it's not enough. Thank you very much for this information, James. We are progressing, and for me it's also important in this podcast, in this smart discussion, also to learn a bit more about you. And therefore my first questions James, is you mentioned you are again in a lockdown. How can you ensure to have a satisfactory life-work balance? I'm always saying life-work balance because for me, life it's a bit more important than the work.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's, this is for us in the UK. This is I think it's our third proper lockdown. But I think it depends which area of the UK you're in, but it has been a test, and I think it's difficult because you're right. You can't say kind of home and work balance, because home is work now. I'm sitting in my office at home, so there's a very thin line between where I step from my office to the sitting room to watch TV or to go and make a cup of coffee. So what I've put in place, and I'm someone that's worked from home for the best part of about 20 years, on and off, whether that's 5 days a week, 1 day a week, anywhere in between. For me, you've got to have some geographical boundaries within your house if you can. So even if you don't have a room that you can convert to an office, at least have a room you can put a bit of a temporary desk in, so that one room is where you work and that's separate to where you eat, where you drink, where you relax, and where you live when you're not working. I've worked with a couple of businesses over last year, startup businesses who were based in London, in our capital, and had quite young people working for them who lived in the city, and therefore lived, they didn't have their own house. They rented a room in a house. So for them, the one room was their office, it was their living space, it was their kitchen, it was everything, where they dine, where they eat. So that really impacted their mental health. That was hard for them to separate work from home, because it just merged into one. And so that's where what's second most important thing is about structuring your time really carefully, structuring your day, and putting in place the times at which you want to do stuff that isn't work. So for me, and it might have lapsed a bit over Christmas, New Year, but I've got it back from this week. But for me, I like to do exercise and fitness first thing in the morning, and I'm like 6 in the morning, I will get up, and before lockdown I'll go to the gym, or I can go for a run, or I can do something at home. And so I'll do that exercise, and then I can shower, I can have some breakfast, get ready, and then I can start my work. And it might be 8 o'clock in the morning, it might be 8:30, but I can start my work in a different part of the house. And I can work through until whatever time is appropriate for that day, whether it's 5, whether it's 6, might be 4. I might say, I'm not going to do anything this afternoon, but I've got that clear boundary. And after that, laptop shuts down, I'm out of that room, and I'm doing whatever it is I want to do, spending time with the family, doing a hobby, going for a walk, whatever it might be. But having putting in place the time at which you're going to work and not work is important, because otherwise you might just be finishing an email, but your dinner's ready, so you go and have dinner, you take your laptop with you, and so you just put your laptop on your lap after your dinner, and you've got the TV on, and you're with your family, but you're not present with your family. Your head is in your laptop, not with them, and you've just let those lines blur. So it's important to say, this isn't my work time now, this is my relaxing time, this is my personal time. So for me, physical space, time, and as with anything, even before lockdown, is about goal setting, is saying, what do I want to achieve this week that is part of my plan, whether I'm in a business, whether I run a business, what do I want to get achieved this week, and making sure that those goals are realistic, making sure that they help you develop, they help you grow, that you can achieve them, so that you still have that sense of accomplishment when you finish them, and know what you need to do each day. Because if you finish something early on the day and you think, I've done everything I wanted to do today, I've done it a bit earlier, then great, kind of finish earlier, laptop down, away from the room, and go and do something different. But for me, that's standard practice, I think, in business, and particularly when you run your own business, to be really mindful of what you want to achieve, and getting that sense of enjoyment when you can tick it off the list that you've done it.
Sure, and I think this is something that everybody should follow to understand that it's also important to have proper time, even if we are working from home. And the next question I would like to ask you is, what's the last book you read, or a book that you would suggest to the audience to read?
Well, topical actually, on what I was just talking about. The book I'm reading at the moment is by a gentleman called John Doerr, and it's called Measure What Matters, which I think probably a lot of your viewers and listeners might have read. But it's interesting because I'm doing a piece of work with a business who are changing how they measure performance. And they don't have a very mature way of looking at performance at the moment, but they want to adopt a similar approach that companies like Facebook and Google and Netflix have adopted, which is called OKRs, which is different from your standard objectives and KPIs. And so John Doerr's book is all around OKRs and where they came from his time at Intel and how he took them to Google, and and obviously he's kind of very successfully implemented them or founded companies or been part of companies who have helped other businesses adopt them. So I'm kind of a third of the way through reading that book at the moment, and it's good because it's helping me just get some of that detail around OKRs and helping this business implement them. I think prior to that, it probably would have been it would have either been another business book, because I tend to like flicking between books that are around kind of business growth and having the right mental attitude towards business, or it would have been an autobiography. And I can't remember whose I read last because it probably was a while ago. It was probably on holiday, which wasn't last year, sadly. But I kind of like those. I like finding out about people and what makes them tick and what makes them who they are. And ideally kind of relating that into business. And when I'm not reading those kind of books, I like a good detective book, something that has me gripped from page 2.
That's also a nice one. Back to the stories about individuals. Perhaps if somebody wants to contact you to get some insight on what we were discussing, what's the best way to contact you?
So they can find me on LinkedIn, James Perryman, and hopefully be able to share some links. If not, there's a photo that looks very much like this. And yeah, connect with me there, and you can find out obviously a bit more about me and my business and what I do. Or take a look at the website, which is Monentus, which is momentus.uk.com, and there you'll see more around what we do in the world of customer experience, but also around team engagement and career and leadership development. And you'll get my email address and my phone number. So yeah, please go via LinkedIn or the website to get in touch.
Thank you, James. And the very last question, it's please, could you share the last gold nugget with the audience? Is something that we discussed, or something new that you would leave to the audience?
Oh, what a great question. I think I'm going to relate it to that book that I'm reading, Measure What Matters by John Doerr, and my nugget would be whether it's for you individually and it's a personal goal that you want to accomplish in 2021, or it's as a business and it's about where you want your business to be, or if you're within a business, what you want to accomplish within your role. Don't just settle for having an objective, something that says, I will deliver this by the end of December, or I will have lost 2 stone of weight in 12 months time. Think bigger. Think about something that in the world of OKRs is called big, hairy, audacious goals, or BHAGs. And it helps you think much, much bigger. And it might be a great example could be you say, I want to run in a marathon. I'm going to run a marathon and I'm going to do it in less than however many hours. And then you break that down, because you might say, well, actually, if I'm going to run in a marathon, I'm going to have to lose some weight. So that's I've just already elevated that losing weight objective into a much bigger goal. So I'm going to have to lose some weight. And actually that means, I'm going to join a running club, and I'm going to have to learn about nutrition and diet. And I'm going to have to think about some of the bits around registering for a marathon. Where do I do it? Do I do it in New York? Do I do it in London? Where will it be? But have that great big goal that might just feel a little bit scary, a little bit exciting. But if you aim for it, do you know what? You might get to the end of December and you might not have run a marathon, but that could be because you're going to do it in 2022, and it could be you actually achieved a personal best distance of 20 miles rather than 26 miles, but you went somewhere towards it, which is way better than just a small objective of losing some weight, because it gives it some purpose, it gives it some intention, and it gives it some excitement as well.
As usual, I am not commenting the gold nuggets because it's your gold nuggets for the audience. I want only to say thank you very much, James, for your time.
Yeah, Gregorio, thanks for inviting me. Appreciate it.
And also to the audience, thank you very much for being here, for following this smart discussion with James. I close with 9 words. Please like it, please share it, please follow it, and so we can have other discussion in future about it. Thank you very much. Arrivederci, grazie mille.
Thank you.